Hello, and welcome to the Tuning In podcast. I'm Dana Evans, your inner voice and emotional support coach. In this podcast, we explore the deep wisdom that lives in our bodies, emotions, and inner voice. Together, we'll shed the layers that no longer serve us, creating space to tap into the flow of life and experience true ease. So, are you ready to join me? Let's dive in. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Tuning In podcast. Today, we are going to talk about an emotional support guide and how you can support yourself when you are in a state of emotional overwhelm, when you've had a surge of emotion that shows up in your life, when you've had something difficult come up, or if you're in a state or a phase or season in your life where things are extra intense. Maybe you find yourself in a freeze response or a fight or flight response, or your nervous system feels out of balance. These are going to be tools that you can turn to over and over again to support yourself. And spoiler alert, you can also use these in everyday life, not just when something difficult is going on. Because I believe that the more we can support ourselves in regular life when things are operating at a regular pace and feeling relatively stable, the more we build that practice and consistency within our bodies so that when things get difficult, we already have a strong baseline to work from. Because I've seen this over and over again. If suddenly things get difficult and you try to add a bunch of new practices to support yourself, it can be a challenge. There can be resistance and it can feel overwhelming to have to do a bunch of new things when you are moving through a challenging phase in life. So if you do them when things are stable, it's going to be a lot easier to call on things when things are challenging. So let's get started. If you listened to the episode that I posted before this one, I told a story of how my nervous system had gotten dysregulated and I'd had kind of an attachment rupture and it really threw me into a tizzy. And I did do quite a few practices for myself during that time. And ultimately, I chose to get support from a coach, my coach, to take me through the completion of the emotional arc. Because one thing that you'll notice can happen is we can end up in this place where we're constantly going from feeling anxious and or numb, right? Those can kind of teeter together. Like you're just feeling like either really uneasy or really shut down. And then you'll get to a place where like the emotion kind of comes and it starts to surge, right? I'm describing the emotional arc here. You get to the place where it starts to surge, it starts to grow, it starts to build, and then you're not able or you're not willing to let it come to the peak, to the crest, and then crash and move to the other side. And on the other side is how you have completed the emotional arc, or I like to visualize it as an emotional wave, right? So you go from calm waters and then the wave starts to build, and then it crashes, and then it smooths out and softens. And the key here is that on the beginning side, you have what can look like calm, what can look like neutral, but is more likely a state of numb. So it's a disassociated state. It's a disconnected state. It's a shutdown state. It's a state that's trying to suppress any emotion, any intensity in the body. Okay. And you can kind of pick that out in yourself. Can you notice when you're in that state? And that state, as I just said, is often coupled with anxiety. So it's like, oh my gosh, I feel anxious. Oh my gosh, I don't want to feel anxious. What can I do to numb the anxiety, right? I can have a drink. I can go on social media. I can go for a run. Like all of these things that are often designed to distract from what is this anxiety that ends up causing us to shut down a little bit. And honestly, it's very effective. Buffering is a very effective tool. There's a million ways to buffer, and it's not inherently bad. It can be very effective and very supportive at times, but you have to ask yourself, how often am I actually in a state of trying to numb this discomfort that I'm feeling? And is it actually working in that it's helping me feel better, or is it just numbing me? And so when we're constantly trying to suppress this anxious feeling, well, I see anxious and anxiety as a faux motion, right? A fake emotion. And I know anxiety feels very real in the body, but what I've seen in clients over and over again is that when they're constantly feeling this anxious feeling, this vibrating in their bodies, it's actually a mask for something deeper, for a more intense emotion that's underneath the surface, which is why we have to go into the wave, right? And so a lot of times the anxiety can be around the other emotion, or it can be around like, I'm anxious to feel anxious because I'm afraid if I feel anxious, it's going to get worse, right? And I'm not going to be able to handle it. Like, these are very real things that go on. So that's where we get stuck on that first half of the arc of the wave. It's like, I feel numb, I feel anxious. Oh my God, something's showing up and emotions starting to build. I don't want it. I'm afraid of it. Boom, push it down. And then you go back, numb, anxious. But what we want to do is we want to be able to ride the whole wave, get to the crest, and then get to the breaking point, the release. And then on the other side of the release, when you've completed that emotional cycle, when you've completed that arc, you actually get true calm waters. So can you feel the difference? If you pause for a moment, take a breath, and tune into your body, can you sense the difference between when you're numb versus when you're calm, peace, at ease, right? They're different energies that are often confused. In fact, we often numb because we want to feel calm, but we don't realize that like the pathway to calm is through the wave, through the emotion. And that doesn't mean you always have to do this, but I will say the more adept you get at moving through the waves, moving through the emotions, the easier they move through, and the more often you're going to be in that true calm state, which is really ultimately what all of us are deeply wanting: bliss, calm, peace, ease, steadiness, right? It's this feeling of floating, this relief. And my inner voice has said this: to release is to feel relief. And I don't believe a lot of us have that association, because to get to the release, there's some turbulent water that you may go through. So all of that is to say that I did what I could for myself, and I always do. And sometimes we can't complete the cycle on our own. And it's really valuable to work with a coach or someone, a therapist, someone who's skilled in this to support you to complete the cycle, because it might feel too uncomfortable, too scary, too unknown, or you might just not know where to start to do it on your own. And with bigger traumatic experiences, if you suspect that your anxiety is related to something bigger, anything that's like a traumatic experience that happened that probably caused a rupture in your system, thus dysregulating your nervous system, causing you to maybe be in a state of constant fight or flight, or you're easily triggered into complete freeze or fear or dysregulation. Anytime there's been some sort of rupture like that in like acute or generalized consistent trauma, it is very, very, very supportive to work with someone. And I said this before, and I'll say it again: rupture happens in isolation and repair happens in community. So if you're working through something, yes, use these tools. I believe in these tools wholeheartedly, and they're going to help regulate you. And if you really, really, really want to get to the root and release what's underneath, and if you've had some bigger things happening in your life, then I highly recommend you do that in community with someone else, so that you have support and connection along the way. You don't have to do this on your own. Rupture happens in isolation. Repair happens in community. You don't have to do this on your own. This isn't your burden to carry. This isn't yours to fix by yourself. It's really beautiful to have someone support and guide you through it. Okay? So let's just get to a few of the basic check-ins. So at first, when we're looking to consistently check in with ourselves and be like, okay, where am I at? And if you're feeling like you're out of whack, you're out of balance, I always like to check with the basics first. Before we have to do all these big, complicated things, let's check with the basics. Am I sleeping? Am I well fed? Am I hydrated? Have I moved? Am I breathing? And have I been outside? Okay, write that down. These are the basics. And I cannot tell you the number of times that even for myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm morose and everything's bad and nothing's working out. And then I check in and it's like, wow, I slept terribly last night. Or gosh, I haven't gotten off the couch all day. Oh, wow, I'm actually really thirsty. Sunshine sounds really nice. Maybe I should go on a bike ride, right? When was the last meal I ate? And was it chips? Or did I have a balance of protein and some carbs and some fat and some vegetables? What am I putting into my body? How am I feeding myself? What am I seeing visually? Have you just been stuck on your phone? Are you seeing trees and clouds and the sky? Are you reading newspaper article after newspaper article telling you all about the issues in the world, that even if those aren't your personal issues in this moment, you're starting to feel like your world is collapsing when actually everything's pretty okay in your direct 3D life? So we want to check in with the basics first and do everything you can to meet those needs. Now, I'll acknowledge here that the sleep in particular is such a catalyst to so many other challenges. Honestly, I could do a whole episode on sleep, so I'm not going to address this fully, but really checking in with yourself of if you're not sleeping, number one priority becomes how can I increase my quality of sleep? Whether you're drinking a tart cherry juice and coconut water hydration mocktail before bed, eliminating alcohol before bed, significantly reducing or eliminating your caffeine, even for a few days, will cause you to sleep more because you're exhausted if you don't have caffeine. Getting sunlight first thing in the morning to regulate your circadian rhythm, trying to avoid being on your phone and blue light within an hour to two before bed, massaging your feet with oil before bed, maybe taking a shower, right? Doing some breathing exercises, doing somatic exercises. Like there's so many resources that you can use to help improve your sleep. And that becomes number one if when you ask those questions, sleep is consistently the thing that's not happening. Like think about the last time you were terribly underslept. Maybe it was last night. And then think about your mood the next day. Do we need to address the mood or do we actually need to address the root in that case, which is sleep? So step one, assess the basics, do everything you can to find balance within those. Then we'll move on to the other steps. Okay, breathing. I mentioned this in the basics, but I think it gets to be pulled out. So a lot of times when we are in a state of dysregulation, the breath goes up and in. So you'll find yourself with the air being kind of stuck on the inward cycle. And even when I tell people in those moments to exhale, it often sounds like this. Okay? When we hold thoughts, if you're not feeling great, what do? You go into your head and you start spiraling and thinking, and what's wrong? And what am I doing? And blah, blah, blah. Worst case scenarios, we're going in all these thinking. And the mind is fed by like breathing in, inhale, thoughts, inhale, thoughts, inhale, thoughts. But when we exhale, we can move things out and down and we get into our body, right? So we want to exhale longer so we can get further and deeper into the body. So a simple practice is breathing, inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4, hold it, hold it, hold it. Exhale for 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then push the last of the air out and pause. And then you cycle back to the inhale. So we inhale for 4 and hold it for 2 counts. Exhale for 6 and then push the rest of the air out. And that's going to train your body to send the breath out and down, which in itself can be a settling, calming practice. The next one is, and you'll notice most of these are designed to kind of get you back into your body, right? Out of the head about thinking and spiraling and into the body of feeling and grounding. So feet on the ground. Now, I love to do this outside, and I love to do this with bare feet. But if you can't, that's fine. You can do it on the floor in your house. But this comes in two places. Step your feet onto the ground, and I like to step them a little bit wider than hip distance. Because again, especially if we're having a lot of anxiety, the tendency is for you to stand really close together and like tuck your tail. So you think about if your pelvic floor is like a bowl that you're holding, the bowl would be tipping backwards, right? That would tuck your butt up and under. We want to imagine tipping the bowl forwards so that your pelvic floor, your tailbone actually tips. So instead of it tucking, it tips forward, which creates a little curve in the lower back. Stepping your feet wide, you create space for the energy to move out and down. Again, so often with anxiety and with emotional stressors, what happens is we shut our body down, we tuck our tail, we tuck our chin, we collapse our chest, and we come in. But that can trap the emotion and it has nowhere to go. So it's pinging around in your body, creating more intensity. So step your feet wide, tilt your pelvic floor forward, create space, open up, slight bend in your knees, and just feel your feet on the ground, whether it's on the dirt, in which case you're going to sync up with the energy of the earth, right? The actual vibration of the earth that itself is very grounding. You could do that while holding a tree or setting your hands on a rock, anything that's connecting you to something that's of nature, of the actual earth, while having your feet on the ground, wide stance, and then breathing. And then you cycle into your breath and you imagine the breath going out and down through your pelvic floor. Okay, next one, tuning into your body. This is everything because we get into our heads, but a really simple practice is just take a moment and exhale, have your feet on the ground. You'll see these can build on each other really easily. You can make a whole beautiful little practice out of this that takes 5 minutes. Feel yourself in your body. Close your eyes, exhale, exhale, right? You're going to want to inhale and think. We want to exhale and feel. And just start to notice the body because any pain or feelings from your body can be SOS signals. So we want to take a moment to see it, hear it, receive it, feel it, and speak to it. So the question I like to ask is, body, where do you want my attention and presence right now? And then I just notice, is there a part of my body that feels tight? When I ask that question right now, it's like my left shoulder, right around the trap area. Then I yawn, right? Body's responding immediately. Body, where do you want my attention or presence? You might feel a temperature change. You might feel something tight. You might feel a tingle or a prickle. You might just think or not thinking. You might just be like, oh, it's my knee. Okay, great. It might be a pain. It doesn't matter how it shows up. You might visually see an area of the body, but just ask and intuitively follow wherever it wants you to go. There's no right or wrong. And then go to that place in the body. And I like to place my hands there just for a moment and say, hello, I see you, and I know you are here for me. I am here for you, and I am listening. Breathe. And whatever you want to say, it's just this moment to recognize, gosh, I was avoiding this. I was ignoring this. I didn't even realize I was feeling this. And I'm just pausing to say, hey, I'm here. And just pause and breathe. Okay. Another great practice is connecting to others. So if you know your tendency, for example, this is my tendency, is if you tend to isolate when you're not feeling great, know that this can be an invitation for you to connect. So again, if rupture happens in isolation, repair happens in connection. So if you tend to isolate and pull away when things aren't great, what would it feel like to have someone trusted that you could reach out to and build connection with? Okay. Also, this can depend on how you like to process personally. So, are you a verbal processor? Like maybe you want to call someone and say, hey, get really clear on how you need to communicate. Like, hey, I just want to process something. Can I download to you right now? I don't need any advice, right? Be really clear. Or, hey, I'm really struggling with this and I could use some advice. Do you have time to talk through and brainstorm with me? Or maybe you want to send a voice memo to someone, right? And just say, hey, I'm trying to figure something out. Let me know if this is received. It doesn't matter if you're verbal. If you're a written processor, again, you could send a text message, but you could also journal. And so there's connection to others, like maybe you reach out to a coach or a friend or a family member or a group that you are a part of. Maybe you just go into a community like a local coffee shop and meet up with someone there. It doesn't even have to be to talk about your quote problem or the emotion or what's coming up. It's more like maybe you just need a point of physical connection, right? Maybe you just need a hug from your partner or a cuddle with your cat. Maybe you just need to be around other people who are vibrant and you go to a class. Even if you can't fully participate, like you're there to be in others' energy. Connection can mean a lot of things, and it's worth actually getting to know and understand what it means for you. You can also connect to God or the universe or your inner voice. Write, channel information, ask for another perspective, right? And I love writing to my body, okay? So just like you said to your body when you did a tune in with your body and you said, hey, I hear you. I like to write to the sensation in my body. Hey, ache in my belly. You've been here for a week now, and I really want to know what you're needing me to hear, why you want me to visit. What can I do to support you? What do you need to share? And just see what comes through. Okay. So building connection within self, building connection with the body, building connection with something bigger than you, building connection in your community, building connection even with a pet or a partner or a friend or a family member. Just that itself reminds you you're not alone and you don't have to do this alone. And there are people that are willing and able to commune with you. Okay. Another great practice is when you're feeling super dysregulated, and maybe in particular, if you're in a disassociated or kind of a freeze state, look for some anchors. And what I mean by that is when we're in a freeze state, we can completely be disconnected from our bodies. So we're like numb kind of to the world. So what's really supportive in those moments is to call in your senses so that we re-engage with the world that we're in. So questions to ask: what is present right now? What do I see? What do I hear? What do I taste? Literally licking your lips, right? Like, what do I taste? What do I smell? If you're feeling still so numb that like you can't engage with that, look for something. Look for the birds. Look at a green plant. Open a tin of nutmeg or cinnamon and smell it. Cook bacon. Engage your senses. And then listen, what do I hear? Can I hear the birds chirping outside? Can I hear the hum of the air filter in my house? You know, I heard this a while ago, and then I actually just saw this again the other day. Something to the effect of hearing bird sounds is highly correlated with reducing our anxiety. Don't quote me on the why, but what I recall hearing a while ago was that when birds feel happy and safe, they'll be like, right? They'll be chirping and making noise and communing with each other. And a lot of times when birds go silent, it's like, there's something here, like we have to look out. So there's this transmission when we're out and about and we hear the birds chirping that is literally translating into our body like it is safe right now. And how beautiful is that? So listening to bird sounds can help reduce the anxiety and tension within our bodies. So what do you hear? Bird sounds. Maybe playing bird sounds on your phone if there aren't any birds by you in the moment, right? And then what do you feel? So this is so supportive as well. If you're feeling disassociated, like maybe you need to put a weighted blanket on, or a lot of times when we're disconnected, our temperature regulation is off. So we're like really cold, or we don't realize we're cold. So it's like, what is my temperature? Am I hot? Am I cold? What can I do to meet my core physical needs in this moment? Because if we're dysregulated, we can have forgotten to take care of our physical bodies, which leads the physical body to feel less safe. So do I need to put a sweatshirt on? Am I really hot? Do I need to take a layer off? Do I need to go stand in the sun to warm up? Do I need to take a bath or a shower? Maybe I need to put peppermint oil on my body to cool down, or maybe I need a heat mat or a heat bag to warm up. Maybe I need a cup of tea. Maybe I need a cup of ice cold lemonade. What do you need in terms of physical safety and comfort and temperature regulation? This is a really big one. Okay. I love conversations with something bigger and higher than you. This can be really difficult this time. If religion and God really connects with you, like maybe reading some scripture, right? If you are regularly connecting with your inner voice, listening or reading or just sitting there, sometimes I just lie down with my hands on my body and I say, inner voice, oh, what do you have to share with me? Inner voice, can you offer some guidance, a different perspective? And sometimes all I feel literally is a tingle in my body. And sometimes that's enough to make me cry with relief because I feel the presence of something greater than me, right? Or if it's connecting with nature, like, hey, nature, give me a sign. Can you show me a bird, right? Can you show me something, a rainbow, a cloud? Like, show me, let me feel my connection to you. And maybe you'll suddenly hear the trees rustle, or you'll see a little critter scurrying by. Don't forget how flipping connected we are to ourselves, to each other, to nature, to source, the universe, God, all of it. Like we are inter-freaking connected. And when we disassociate or disconnect, or when we're too caught up in our own stuff, we can completely forget about the greater connection that is always present. And that is a beautiful relief when you feel that. And I shared this story on last week's episode, but I chose for connection to talk to a tree. So I sat down in the ground, right? I placed my hand on the tree. So both of those are going to connect me to the frequency of the earth. And then I spoke and shared with a tree. I let it receive me, right? So conversations with something greater than you. Another big one around that is, if this is supportive, flooding your system with content and consuming things that are really highly vibrational and supportive. So just like I said early on, watch what you're consuming. Like, are you consuming terrible news all day long and like comparison Instagram posts? Well, what if you started playing Eckhart Tolle, playing a podcast that is reading scripture to you, or watching just the most feel-good, uplifting movie, or playing music that just makes your heart sing, pouring and flooding your system with things that are deeply nourishing is a really beautiful building of that practice of having those conversations and minding what you're consuming. Calling your energy back daily, y'all. Think about how many people are plugged into you and downloading, sharing with you, how many people you're like kind of sucked into their energy, how much you're on any sort of social media or reading articles or on LinkedIn, reading about these people and this person and reading newsletters and reading the news and on phone calls and getting text messages. Think about how much of your energy every day is getting drained and pulled out of you. And in turn, how much of other people's energy is getting stuck in you. So a beautiful practice is to clear out your energy field and call back your own energy daily, right? So it's like create a little fortress of like, this is my space, my energy. I have actually a couple meditations that I have for that. If you're interested in that, let me know. I'll make it available to everyone. So do an energy callback meditation. In fact, I'll put that in the show notes. So look for the show notes. I'll put my call your energy back meditation in there, and you just listen to that. And it's this fun little process. I forget which one, but it's like you take a laundry basket and you go around and you collect all the shit that isn't yours and you send it back to wherever it belongs. And then you see where you left your stuff behind over the last day or week, and you call it back and you bring it back home and integrate it. It's wonderful. So doing a practice like that, or just following a visual of like, oh my gosh, sometimes I lay down at the end of the day and I just backtrack. Where have I been? Where on my phone have I been? Whose Instagram page have I been on? Where was I on my computer, right? Where was I physically? Who was I talking to? Who was I connecting with? And I just backtrack, and then I cut the cords, and I'm like, not mine, not mine, not mine. Return to sender, return to sender. And then I sit back and look at where my energy was left behind, and I say, come home, come home, come home. And honestly, that will also make you fall asleep, because that's a lot of mental work. So it's a great practice to fall asleep, to do your energy callback. You can also like visualize whatever beautiful color comes to mind, like a colored light surrounding you, that anything that enters through it is transmuted immediately into your own light and energy, or is dissolved if it is not for you, and it protects everything within you. This is a deeply powerful practice that is so simple, and I think we could all benefit from, because I know we're all overstimulated and overengaged in day-to-day life. So call your energy back. Gosh, I have so many practices. This is like master level stuff, and I love it so much. I know it sounds simple, but it's like, are we actually doing these things? The power is in the process. The power is in actually using what you have. There's knowing from the mind, like, I know I should probably do this, but then there's like embodiment of it, which is why consistently practicing this is so valuable. So other things that I love are tapping, EFT, emotional freedom technique, tapping, but you don't really need to know all of that in order to successfully tap. All you really need to do is find your collarbones, okay? And then right below them, and just take your fingers. Can you hear that? And you just tap. And you just tap and breathe. That's all it takes to start. But as you're tapping, you can say something like, even though I'm feeling an intense surge of discomfort right now, I deeply and completely love and accept myself. Even though this feels like the hardest moment I've had this week, I'm willing to see it differently. Even though it doesn't feel like I can see it differently, I'm willing to make space for even the smallest shift in how I'm experiencing this. Blah, 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 right? And let your intuition really lead you to what needs to be said, because so often, you guys, oh my gosh, so often, the pain that we're feeling, the emotion that we're feeling, the anxiety that we're feeling, it's all this stuff that's stuck in the body. It doesn't have anywhere to go. And so sometimes just speaking it out into the world moves it. It at least gives it somewhere to go that isn't this like stuck pinball machine in your body. Let it out. And, my only encouragement with the tapping is, yes, say the worst case scenarios that are running through your head. They're already there. Let them out. But then as you continue to go, keep moving yourself toward an outcome that feels more desirable. Like, and I'm willing to see it a different way. And I trust that this isn't going to be forever. And I know tomorrow is a new day, right? So we're moving the energy. Okay. Any sort of audio meditation, yoga nidra is extremely supportive for this type of practice. It's a deep body awareness practice. You can do that at any point during the day, and just look on Insight Timer or the Calm app, or just Google. I think Spotify even has yoga nidra options, and you just play it and it takes you through this super hyper presence of body awareness. It's like feel the tips of your thumb, feel the tip of your index finger, feel the palm of your hand, feel your elbow. And it's so hyper present and aware that it really relaxes our body because it takes us out of the head. Other great things, there's sometimes the need to calm our energy and like to go into slowness and stillness. And then there's the times where we need to move our energy, right? And we need to move it, shake it, whatever. So I love body shaking. I love like shaking the body like a maniac, stomping. And honestly, if you can push yourself to do this until you break a sweat, it's going to feel really good. Punching the bed, I literally did that last week. If you have a punching bag, I have one and we don't have it up yet. I'm going to put it up because it's such a good outward movement of energy and shaking the body. Another one I love doing is if you're standing straight, inhale, stretch your arms to the ceiling, and then exhale. And as you do, you fold forward and you sweep your arms behind you. I call these body sweeps. And then you inhale, you stand up, you lift your arms up, and then you exhale, you lean forward, fold forward, and sweep your arms behind you. And you do that with your breath. And you can go as far forward, keep a slight bend in your knees, as far forward as feels good for your body. Some people, it's a little hard on their lower back, so they only fold halfway. It's just a beautiful process to move energy. Of course, physical touch. Hugs are so great, but also you can hug your body as in cross your arms and then squeeze the opposite bicep, squeeze down into your forearms, right? Squeeze your legs. I love placing my hands on top of my head and gently pressing down as my head presses up into my hands. You can squeeze the back of your neck. You know, like a cat has the scruff that you can squeeze and they actually don't mind being picked up by the scruff because that's what their parents do for them. Well, think about squeezing the scruff of your neck, right? As you do that, open your jaw, right? Soften. Yeah, it's such a powerful one. So when our nervous system is dysregulated, literally what happens is the muscle actually like contracts and pulls away from the bone, right? It's like, right? You can feel that. Like if you get scared, like how your body reacts, like that's what's happening on a micro level within the muscle and tissue in our bodies. So by hugging, placing your hands on your body and squeezing gently, you're literally telling the muscle, like you're helping anchor it back onto the bone and soften into safety. So that is signaling safety to the rest of your body as well. Another great physical one is making sounds. So a lot of times emotion gets really stuck in our throats. So if you've ever felt tightening in your throat when you start to feel emotion come up, the back of your tongue, the front of the throat, and you're like, oh God, and you know that feeling. A lot of times that's preventing you from crying and moving things out and speaking what you have to say. It's a very, very powerful area. And there's deep signs in that area. And I know you can feel it. Like, that's why it's so powerful when we're releasing emotion that like if you're yawning, right? If you're coughing, if you're sneezing, right? All of these are ways that emotion is moving out through the throat and it's clearing in that area. So to support that, I love making sounds and I do 3. I'm not going to do this loud, but what you would do is as loud as feels good for you. You would take an inhale. And then the first one you would do ah, which I believe connects to the heart. So you go ah, and you would do that as long as you can. And notice when you want to cut it off, drag it out until you're out of breath. And then the second one is ooh. So you would take an inhale and you go ooh. But again, think of from the belly. Listen to the difference. Here's from my chest, ooh. And then here's my belly. I'm going to go from chest to belly. Ooh. We're just changing the depth that the sound comes from. And that vibration overall, tapping supports this as well as the body shaking and the stomping. Vibration is really supportive. So we might need subtle vibration like humming, would be the next one. And then voo, V-U, voo would be the fourth one. So we have ah, oo, voo. So sometimes you need really subtle vibration, like gentle tapping from your chest to your diaphragm to your belly. Sometimes you need to pat a little harder on your body. Sometimes you just need the vibration of your voice, of humming, of singing, of making noises like ow, wow, wow, wow. Like I just make funny noises sometimes. And sometimes you need a more intense vibration, right? Like shaking your body. So you're becoming an expert at attuning to what your body needs. These are just ideas and tools that are going to support you at any time. Whew. Okay. I think that's a really good starter pack. I feel like I could just kind of go on forever. But I think this is a really, really, really good starter pack. And then I'll end this all with find a phrase that is really helpful for you when you are in it. So for me, the one I've used for a long time is tomorrow is a new day. I declare that out loud. I say to John, tomorrow is a new day. I get to try again tomorrow. And another one I like to use is I like to tack this on to the end of things that are happening. Like, I'm really struggling today, and that's okay. So you can tap on, and that's okay, to the end of things. Like, I am just feeling so heavy and low today, and that's okay. Tomorrow's a new day. So play with what feels good for you. You might want something that's a little more active, which is like, I know this is hard, but I can handle anything that comes my way because I have so far. Or I'm willing to see this in a new perspective. God, universe, can you give me clarity? Right? You can ask that question. Or I see that this is hard for myself and I'm holding space for it to shift. Whatever. There's so many things you could say, and it really has to resonate with you, but just make it something that you can easily turn to, because what happens when we're having a hard day, when we're feeling a season, especially of like intense emotion, when we're dysregulated and out of balance, it's really easy for the thoughts to creep in and totally make everything worse. It's hard enough to feel low and sad and anxious. We don't need the mind to say, you're bad, you're lazy, you suck, you're terrible, you're embarrassing, you're shameful, you should have done better. Why haven't you cleaned the whole house today when you feel like crap? Like, you'll never feel better. This is it. This is over. This is the end. Like, the mind goes deep into doom so quickly. Oh. All of these things are designed to get us into the body because the mind can be so intense, but also the writing, the journaling, the asking for a new perspective, the tapping. We don't have to shut the mind down and say you don't get to speak. Those allow the mind things to move out while also subtly directing it toward a more supportive story. When you're in your lowest, it is not the time to trust the doomsday of the mind. If you are underslept, we cannot trust the mind. If you are days before your period, do not trust the mind. We can trust the body and really listen. But if the mind is taking you down this deep doom scroll, know that there is another perspective and give yourself some time and open to what else could be true. What if this isn't the ultimate truth? And having a phrase to lean on can be really helpful as a distraction so the mind doesn't hook you in and drag you down. Because ultimately, the goal of all of this whole toolbox, this whole support system, it's bringing you back to your body, reminding you of what's happening and to check in with what's happening, knowing that this is not permanent, it's temporary, and also recognizing that there is deep value in tuning in and listening and acknowledging the sensations versus avoiding them, moving through them in the emotional arc instead of staying in the stuck, numb side. And of course, you think this is deep. Maybe I go really deep into this in my program, The Emotional Edit, and that is coming this spring. So I will put the link to get on the wait list in the show notes, because we really are about the body, the emotions and the inner voice. And we're about spending more time in what becomes your new baseline of peace and ease, not anxiety and numb. We are flipping the frickin' script so that you're truly feeling the calm waters in your day-to-day life, and that you get to this point where you know and trust that, yes, I can spike really high, and yes, I can trip and fall low, and I know that my baseline is peace, calm, and stillness, and that's where I get to return to. So often people are scared to ride the emotional wave, right? To go through the entire completion cycle of an emotion because they don't trust their baseline. So they think, well, if I feel this bad day to day normally, if I go into the emotion, I'm going to crash so low. I'm going to be so low that I'm never going to be able to get out of this. And that's just not worth it to me because I'm barely hanging on as it is. Why would I bring more emotion into the equation? But the point here is that more emotion actually unlocks the numbness in our bodies. I'm not here to say, oh, the whole goal is just to feel better all the time. No, the goal is to get better at feeling. Because the better we get at feeling, the less the highs and lows are going to destabilize us. And the more we see that every time I go through the emotional cycle, every time I complete the emotional cycle, that arc, that wave, every time I go through it to completion, I actually end up in a state of calm stillness, which is what I deeply desire. And then the more you do that, the more it literally rewires the brain for calm stillness. And it starts to feel safe and allowed to not be in a constant state of stress, worry, fear, pain. That's rewiring actually that is required in the brain. And the way to rewire that is to shift your experience with emotion, because the mind avoids what it fears, and what it fears it avoids. And if it is avoiding something, it thinks it's dangerous and it makes it scarier and scarier. But we want to make this more normal, easier to see, easier to experience, lighter, safer. Then we get the rewiring. Then you're not constantly living in numb and anxious. You're living in calm stillness. And it's okay if you get sad. It's okay if you get knocked off the horse. It's okay if you have a bad week or a bad month, because you know that you're always going to come back to the still, calm, ease, bliss, stable state, because that's your new baseline. So that's what we're doing in the emotional edit. I would love for you to join us. Get on the wait list, because I have some major bonuses for those who join through the wait list, including some special pre-sale pricing. Even if you're not sure that you want to join, just get on the wait list so that you get the information that you need so that your body can make that decision for you. Not from a place of fear from the mind, but from a place of peace and ease in the body. So with that, thank you as always for listening. It is such a treat to get to share these with you. Take them, use them, play with them, see what works for you, see what you need, see what you resonate with, and then let it be something that you lean on. Let these tools support you, whether you're in a stable place or not, because they're going to build this resilience within your own body. Okay. Thank you all, as always, for listening. Get on the Emotional Edit waitlist, and I will see you next time. Thank you for joining me in another episode of the Tuning In podcast. If you loved this episode, please rate and review it or share it with a friend. If you want to go deeper into the realm of emotions and learn the language of your body, check out my audio course, Emotions Decoded, at alignful.com/audio. As always, you can follow along with my journey on Instagram at Dana_Evans. See you next week.